Anthony, Cameron, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us, Corey. Appreciate it.
Yeah, super excited about this episode. And really, we're talking before the show about $1 million mistake. Before we get to that, though, I would love for you guys just to take a minute and give kind of a brief overview of who you guys are, kind of your backstory, so everybody can really get a good feeling for who you guys are.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Absolutely. Corey, I'll jump in there. This is Cameron. I got into this industry really just by happenstance. I was a business owner. We're out here in Las Vegas, and I started a business, and I had some success, and I was actually looking for places to put money. And I was kind of early, mid-20s at the time, and I started looking around at opportunities. And to be honest, one of the biggest things that jumped out at me, number one, was just lack of control. And a lot of the opportunities that were presented to me were, hey, you put your money in here and you can't touch it till you're 59 and a half. And to be honest, I thought I was the crazy one because I was the only one that was like, this seems like a terrible idea. But everybody else was doing it. I decided not to. I sat on cash for a long time, and I came across a couple strategies that fit really well for what I was doing as a business owner. And one of those was infinite banking. It just was pure luck, to be honest. My wife and I were buying our house, and our broker actually recommended that I read the book, and he said if I would have read this when I was your age, it would have been the difference of millions of dollars. And so that is really what kind of got me into this. I first started just doing this personally, and then I had other people kind of approach me and ask me to teach them what I was doing there. So that's how I ended up in this industry.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I just gotta say something real quick. I just thought about this because, just the other day, it's funny because I think about brokers, like financial advisors, right?
Yeah.
They claim to be so damn smart, and I used to be one, by the way. So I'm gonna beat up myself. But the truth, they're brokers for a reason because they're always broker than you are, right? It's the craziest place where millionaires go and get advice from someone that's making $80,000 a year, and they have no idea. It's like they don't have net worth, they have nothing, but yet they know everything, right? And the truth is, the wealthy play the game different.
Yeah.
And the more that you understand, if you want to stay wealthy and become wealthy, you've got to play a different game, and that's kind of what you're talking to.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I was referring to is I went there looking for somebody to teach me how to make money. And the only thing they wanted was to take my money and just manage it, right? And have me come back every 6 months, tell me how it's doing. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, this
is your money and put it in your money. Right?
Exactly. I'm like, right? I'm no dummy, right? But it's like, this doesn't sound like a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Corey, my name's Anthony, and I'm a recovering CPA. After high school, I joined the Army, got a degree in accounting, worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, CFO for a chain of restaurants, opened up my own CPA firm, especially in taxes for small business. And ironically, I worked really closely with my financial planner. I was in the process of getting licensed and kind of doing joint work. And then 2008 happened. And everybody, not everybody, most people got punched in the gut. And I told the guy, like, look, I can't in good conscience tell people, hey, you did everything right, but to no fault of your own, your 401k is now a 201k. And so I said, sorry, I can't do it. And it started me looking for something else. Like, to me, that's when I realized financial planning was broken.
And no control. By the way, that's how I got kicked out of becoming an FA. Right? When that market crashed, my heart left the business because I realized here I am talking a big game like I'm watching over your money. Dude, listen, I have no control. And then when they lose half of $3 million and you look at them and say, well, it's the market.
Yeah.
That doesn't float well, right? That takes your heart away. And then, and these are people that are at retirement ready to live their life. They planned well and did well. And their whole thing was wrecked in 1 year.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
And to me, it's one thing if you make poor decisions, that you got to reap what you sow, right? Yeah. But when no fault of your own and no control of yours, I mean, you are losing you're losing your wealth. And what I realized, there were a small section of my clients that didn't get punched in the gut. In fact, they actually thrived during that time.
Yeah.
So I went to them, how did you get here? How are you thinking differently? What books have you read? What assets are you investing in? They weren't doing their 401k. They weren't in mutual funds. They were creating businesses and real estate, just like Robert Kiyosaki said in Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I, like myself, had read that book, but really didn't execute it. And I kind of realized I needed to do something different, because that Great Recession, there's a recession literally every 10 years. Cameron and I went back to 1900s. There's one every single year. So I realized, if I don't do anything different, why would I expect a different result? So that kind of took my blinders off. And that's when I kind of re-engaged with Rich Dad Poor Dad. But then that's when I got exposed to the infinite banking concept. And so I started incorporating those ideas myself. And just like Cameron had said, my clients were like, what should I do? I don't trust Wall Street. I want to have more control. I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing. And then eventually we turned that into a business. And then I had growing, like teaching people IBC and then taxes. And I had some family, some over here. And so the reason why I started my CPA firm was to be there for my kids. And I wasn't. I was working too much. So I sold my firm and started teaching infinite banking 100% of the time. And then eventually Cameron and I had joined forces about 4 years ago. And so if you put us in the category, it would be financial advisory, but we're very different. No 401ks, no mutual funds. We help people invest in things that they know. And typically that's going to be starting their own business. And we're huge fans of real estate.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is the true difference. There's always different levels of advice along the way, right? And when you first get into your Edward Jones, and I'm not going to beat up Edward Jones, but that's who I used to work for. So
go ahead.
Go for it. We will if you don't.
That's the lower end of the totem pole of all financial advisory firms. But they're great at teaching. But it really is a setup. I mean, it really is a con job. It's a sales. I mean, I was a glorified salesperson, right?
Sure.
And it really was Wolf of Wall Street. Sell A shares, get their money, make your fees, and that's how you survive every month. Keep what you kill, right? But we're going to be holistic, right?
Yeah.
But holistic for them is all paper assets, right?
Yeah.
And that's and that's not how the rich play the game. Not the real rich people. Like, they're not investing in that stuff. They're very well different. And what you just alluded to, Anthony, which is they're owning businesses. They're owning real estate, right?
Yep.
So I would love, Cameron, you talked about earlier on $1 million mistake.
Yeah.
Before we got on the show, let's open that thing up and let's kind of talk about that, because I think that was very interesting. And I need everybody to hear it.
Yeah, $1 million mistake, to be honest with you, Corey, this is probably one of my favorite conversations, is when people kind of start looking at investing, they get a very narrow focus. And so this conversation should help somebody back out from kind of that micro perspective to taking a macro perspective on their finances. And so I'm going to walk you guys through this and share some numbers with you, but these numbers are going to be very generic, okay? So typically if somebody comes to us and they have $1 million of investable assets, they're going to take $800,000 of that and they're going to go put it to work, right? If somebody's in real estate, they're looking for a minimum of double-digit returns, and they'll go out there, they'll get 10% at the end of the year, right? They get $80,000 that they've made in profits, and they've got a 10% rate of return. But if you take that 10% or that 8% that they earn, the 10% that, if you take the $80,000 that they earned at 10%, right? They had an 8% return on their entire wealth. And so that is not the problem. The problem is not on the investment side. The problem is the cash that they have sitting on the side, right? Every real estate investor is sitting on cash, and almost everybody has it sitting there earning almost zero. And so that is the problem, right, that we are going to address. And so again, when people first look at infinite banking, they try to compare the returns inside of an insurance policy to what they can earn inside real estate, and that is the wrong comparison, Really what we want to do is we want to make sure that they understand that, hey, listen, we're going to take the cash that you have, and instead of earning zero, we're going to get it into a policy. And if we can get that $200,000 into a policy, and let's say you can earn 5%, that is $10,000 over that first year. So now if you take that $10,000 and you add it to the original $80,000 that we earned in real estate, is we've earned $90,000 that year, and we just took someone's return on their overall wealth from 8 to 9%. If you take those same projections out, Corey, and you move that forward over 30 years, $1 million at 8% over 30 years is going to be right at $10 million.
Right.
If you take $1 million and you increase that by 1%, right, to 9, mentally that doesn't sound like a big deal. But if you look at those numbers, it actually increases the overall return to just over 13 million. The $1 million mistake that we
$3 million. It's a $3 million mistake, right?
Exactly. It doesn't have the same ring to it, so we call it the $1 million mistake, right? The $1 million mistake is really 3 million, right? And that's the difference, right? But people kind of get up on
that's why
rates
you
of
fight
return.
for that 1% too, right? And that's the thing that's what. And if to me, when I think about wealthy people, really that they're understanding their real goal is to make sure my money is working all the time. That's the money problem I think wealthy people have.
Yeah.
It's not about what should I invest. It's like my problem is I got to make sure my money's working. And you see this in real wealthy people, like the ones that we deal with, investors. They're like, dude, I got to place this money. I got to play. Like they're very emphatical about placing wealth because they know if they don't, they're eroding their earnings, and it happens more quickly than you think.
Absolutely,
that means everything.
Oh, absolutely. And you meet with somebody, and this is a common scenario, right? Somebody's always got cash on reserves. You need it for repairs, you need it for maintenance, whatever else, incidentals.
Think about myself right now.
and that's the big
$1.2 million, $1.5 million, right?
Yeah,
because the bank makes me have liquidity, right?
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, right, this is something you should look at is transitioning or just moving your cash over to cash value inside of a policy. You're going to get a much higher rate of return. And then you've got all these other ancillary benefits that, and I don't know, if we have time, we'll get into it.
Still liquid. Yeah, still somewhat liquid, at least where the bank thinks it's liquid enough, right?
Oh, it's liquid.
I would say it's liquid. I'm doing a land deal today and I needed to wire them the money. They got the money same day. I mean, so, and again, the way we're using life insurance is very different. I like to say this ain't your mama's whole life. This is designed very different. It's designed for high cash value. The death benefit, we like to say, is just icing on the cake.
Right. Makes sense. So, and that's a great analogy of 1% is a $3 million mistake, right? For everybody listening, like, you're going to let that sit in for just a second, because when you really look at your retirement and wealth, because 30 years goes by fast, guys. I mean, listen, 10 years goes by in a heartbeat. Right. And as we start to get older and as we start making wealth, and especially in your prime years, right, from your 40s, 50s, 60s, that's 30 years right there in that span. And that's when you're in your best earning income potential years, right?
Yeah.
You're making good money. It's the best it's ever been. And to make bad mistakes on your money is the difference between retiring in poverty and retiring with lots of money in the bank and living that lifestyle that you want, right? So then explain to us a little bit more about then the metrics. How does it work?
Well, I would say how it works is we got to store our money somewhere.
What do you guys do to help people make it work, I guess, is probably more of a better question.
How we help them is we teach them how and why this concept works. It's got to start with education. Right, not the numbers, but we have a education process that we will take them through. So we help them with the education and designing a policy. Again, it's very unique. It's not your typical a typical financial planner. Like we're beating Edward Jones.
Yeah,
the design is very different. The design is going to be focused on high cash value, low death benefit. We want that liquidity because the goal isn't to have life insurance. The goal is to create passive income, is to buy those assets, but it's going to take some capital. That capital has to store somewhere. So what we teach how and why storing that capital inside a policy is better than storing it in a bank account. Because Corey, tell me if this sounds familiar, if you could relate with a lot of your listeners. A lot of them they want to buy assets. So they set some money aside, typically in a systematic way, somewhere where it's safe and liquid.
Yep.
And so that's typically going to be a bank account.
Yeah.
Right. And then as soon as they have enough money to buy an asset, we buy the asset and drain the account. But then we buy another asset. So we fill up that bank account until we have enough to buy asset number 2. Then we drain the account.
Yeah.
Problem is,
or you sell one and then you gotta have liquidity, right? So you sit on $1 million too, and it just sits there in the account.
Yeah. So
maybe in the money market, but like I'm not trying to mess with it too much, right?
So the biggest problem with that, so what people will do is they store it in their bank, right? And then they go deploy it and invest it. And then when that cash flow or profits come, they put it back in the bank. And then they just continue this process over and over again. The problem, there's a couple of problems with this. The biggest one is we're breaking the compound interest curve. Every time we drain the account, we stop earning interest on there.
True.
And all we're really saying in the simplest terms, instead of storing that in a bank that's safe and liquid, you can store it in a high cash value policy that is safe and liquid. And some might even argue it's safer than a bank, but it's going to earn a higher rate of return. And depending on the state, it's going to be protected from creditors.
Right.
So we have clients that are putting in literally $100,000 into a policy, and now it is protected from creditors, and it's liquid. So now when we find an opportunity, we got to take that capital. And if we take the capital from the policy, instead of draining the account, we can leverage against it. So we take a policy loan, and the policy loan is very different than a commercial loan because there's no credit. It's not run on your credit, and there's no structured repayment schedule. So you have access to that money, and then again, you put it in an asset, and that should create cash flow or profits. We got to put it somewhere, so we put it back in the policy. And because we never drain the account, we borrowed against it, the policy is going to continue to grow during the whole time you're using it. And also with the interest that we pay on those policy loans, if we use the money to create taxable income, AKA single family or multifamily or a syndication, we can deduct that interest against a profit from that investment. So I say this is just like your rewards credit card.
Oh, right? Yeah. That makes it better than the rewards credit card.
Yeah. And so that's what it is in the simplest terms. A lot of times, and even myself, I'm a recovering CPA. I have a tendency to get in the details, right? But in the simplest terms, you got to store the cash somewhere. And we believe putting it in a whole life policy designed properly is better than any bank.
This has probably been one of the easiest. Now, I've heard infinite banking like 3 or 4 times. We've had a couple people on our show, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the best explanation that I've seen and heard yet, right? To really, truly understand. And I like the idea, which you guys were saying too, is this is where it really makes a lot more sense to me. Like, okay, because part of me says, well, if my investing dollars, I'm going to go invest. Why would I ever put anything in there, right? Like, it was like, I would just go invest it, right? Like, why would I even buy a policy? But the way you guys set it up is like, no. This is for your safe money. This is the money that you need to have. And we all have that money, right? Everybody that's been in business that's doing well has got this safety net money, right? And it's most of us, like me right now, is earning zero. We're almost zero, right? The money market does not pay, let me tell you. Right?
This is the low-hanging fruit.
And especially now with inflation, I am losing money slowly but safely, right?
Slowly but safely. I like that.
And I'm beating myself up right now as I'm actually coming to this reality of this is the first time that it really has clicked for me that I actually really understand what the overlay, like, why would I do this? Right. Yeah. And I think you guys just made probably one of the best statements of why, is because I think everybody has that kind of money. And I know I do. And I'm like, geez Louise, that makes a lot of sense. Right. So talk to me about, so in your guys' company, what is your target? What does your best client look like? Like, who are they?
Our best, we really have two of them, kind of business owners, real estate investors, right? The real estate investors we have a ton of clients that are active that, right, know exactly what they're going to invest in. They've already creating passive income. And that's one of the opportunities that we come in and we show them. We say, hey, listen, you're being you're not being as efficient as possible. Right. So that's what we're kind of coming in and helping them do. But the other probably large demographic that we have are people that want to be real estate investors, right? That are working, that are W-2 employees that are looking to transition. And so those guys, number one is we do need to clean up some of the accounts that they have their money in. Right. Because most typical, and pretty much every other account that you're going to look at it's really, really difficult to invest in real estate or businesses in those. Right. And so that's a whole nother conversation. That's what we're doing, is we're introducing them to the opportunity. And then the second part of it is we'll take them, we'll help them vet some opportunities in which they can create passive income. Right. So Corey, you'd mentioned that you've had other people on here before. And what I would venture to say is that one of the reasons that we're a little bit different than others is, number one, is we're going to show you infinite banking. We're going to educate you on how this whole thing works. But also number two is the implementation of it. Right? As if someone doesn't know or hasn't really stepped into that real estate field yet, we're going to help them vet some opportunities, and we'll help them put this money to work to create passive income.
You're going to help find either operators like me or other different vehicles that they can put that money into. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. At all different levels, right? So somebody that's got just a few $1,000 to somebody that's got $1 million and needs to put it to work. We've helped everybody.
Yeah. Well, and I think and that's the part of the advising that think about this. Most business owners that I know are super busy running their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't really have time they all want to do real estate, but they just don't have the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess that's really the benefit of having those two groups too, because one fulfills the other, right? You need real estate guys because they usually have deals that are available. Hey, I need funding for this, I need funding for that. It's a great way for everybody to win, right? And you guys get to help people do what they want to do best, which is not only grow their wealth, but also, we've not even talked about it, but the big T word, right? April is here, right? It is April, March next.
Yeah, feels like it.
Yeah. Next month is April is almost here. Yeah, March right now. Thank God. Hey, by the way, for everybody that's listening, your K1s are due out in 15 more days. But we got ours out today. This is we're recording this on March 1st.
Oh wow, good for you. That's impressive.
I'm going to tell you what it is. I hired a new controller a year and a half ago. Last year we missed the day, right? Like by 2 or 3 days, and we fought like hell to get K1s out, at least the preview, right? So right now we're like, we got 10 days to check it out. We're going to finalize them here pretty shortly, but man. You want to talk about a bear? Get about 500 K1s out and have your CPA and have them be accurate.
Yeah.
I've been there.
You already know that, right?
I'd much rather be here talking to you, Corey, than reviewing K1s.
For my CPAs that do this, God bless them, those guys, right?
Yeah.
But here's the truth, right? This is what I realized too, is the cleaner your books are, the easier it is. Like, last year, it just was a little bit chaotic because we just went from a CPA to a different controller and all that stuff. And then when you get organized and you really get it dialed in, and then you keep it tight all throughout the year, the end of the year is more of it's not so crazy if you have it clean and accurate. That's all I'll say about that, right? But taxes are a big part of the game. And for you guys in that strategy of not paying taxes has got to be a big deal too.
For me, I got a little special place in my heart of minimizing taxes. But yeah, that's for a lot of people, that may be their single largest expense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? When you really look at it. So it's important to manage it. And so
It can erode your wealth faster than you
Yeah.
think. If like, it's great to make money, but then you add taxes on it. Also, like, wait, what happened to all my money? Right. Well, it's not all there. So if you can avoid that in any way, shape, or form.
well, I tell you, I throw this out. I know we're kind of here talking about infinite banking, but I like taxes, like the mob always keeps pulling me back in. We do work with some tax strategists that, well, I know this is being recorded, but they've helped me legally move $100,000 off my tax return.
Yeah.
I still got the money, but the tax code is a tax code no matter what your wealth is. So if you can be proactive and use that to your advantage, you can do the same thing the wealthy are doing.
So this is funny. We had an event. We actually paid Robert Kiyosaki to come speak at one of our events.
Nice.
And so is Tom Wheelwright came right away.
Oh, yeah.
CPA, right?
Yeah.
So Tom was giving the story of like, hey man, we went to this thing in some other country where they're looking at this car, some exotic car, right? And I guess Robert went up there and said, hey, can this car be tax deductible in this country? Can we deduct it? And the tax guy was like, oh no, there's no way, you can't do that. It's absolutely. And so the next day it was Tom's time to speak. And so Robert gets up there, he goes, hey, Tom, show them how this car can be tax deductible. And, they'd already prepped for it the night before. And he was like, and at the end, it's like, and Tom's thought was, listen, everything could be almost deductible if you have a plan and you understand what you're doing and you know all the rules. You can figure out a way. A lot of times it's figuring out the way to do it. And he goes, and there's usually a way if you'll look hard enough and try to understand what you have to do to make it happen. Now, it may not be worth it, but you probably could do it if you figure it out, right?
And speaking of Tom Wheelwright in his latest book, is that where you were going?
I got something better to say. Go ahead.
No, not better than this, because him and I banter all the time, Corey. But in the last book that came out probably about 6 months ago, I think it was the 7 Strategies. But he detailed infinite banking. He detailed using the policy and deducting the interest.
What I was going to say there, Corey, that's much more valuable, a little nugget here for you, is that his books and the way that Tom approaches accounting is amazing, right? First and foremost, Anthony and I have been doing this for a long time. We're in Vegas, and I spent a long time going out and trying to find accountants that were proactive. And what I would say is 99% of accountants out there are reactive, right? They just take what you did the last year, report it, turn it in. Very few of them are willing to go out there with the liability and give you advice on what to do moving forward.
And that is the real difference, my friend, too.
Absolutely. Totally agree. If you get into Tom Wheelwright's book and you look at his approach, he approaches personal finance. He approaches accounting the way that we approach personal finance. And he starts with the goals in mind. And he says, hey, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? Where are you going to go?
Yeah.
And then he backs into like what accounts that you should be using. And that is the same thing that we do. People approach us and they say, hey, I want to have passive income, in the next 5 years. They got all their money in a 401k. And you're like, that's not going to happen, right? That's not going to work. You can't use that. And so we got to start with the goals in mind. And then the vehicles that we use, our goals will dictate what vehicles we're going to use to get there.
Isn't that so? And it seems like such a simple thing, but I've got good CPAs, but I feel like I still, I'm leading the conversations. I'm like, well, let's have a quarterly review. And they're like, well, we're here for a quarterly review. So what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, what does that mean? Right. I'm like, guys, okay. So I'm like, what I really want to know is here's how much money I make so far. Right.
Yep.
Here's what I'm thinking about planning and selling a couple things. Do I sell it now? Do I wait till next year? Do I need to buy something else in between? Mm-hmm. I need some strategies to make sure. And you're like, to me, I was just like, you guys, it just it infuriates me, right? I get so mad.
Absolutely.
I'm like,
absolutely.
Why did we waste our time here? Surely you guys been handling my stuff. You know all my money. And if you needed something for me to have this review, why don't you just ask me, hey, Corey, what's the amount of income you've had? Or give me a quick snapshot. We will provide anything you need. Because those are the conversations I want to have, just like you guys are saying, that proactive approach of where do you want to go? Then we can build the strategy behind it. And it may change along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Corey, we'll give you some names that you can interview on your podcast. We've got a couple accountants in our network that are proactive and approach planning the same way that we do financial planning as well.
Perfect. So I need to find those guys, and I still like the guys that do. They actually do my K1s. Those guys do my K1s great, but they're not proactive in like Corey Peterson's taxes, right? So luckily I get enough depreciation. Doesn't matter. But I still want to make sure that I don't ever pay taxes ever.
Yeah.
Awesome. Listen, as we wrap up, guys, first of all, I want to just say pleasure talking to you guys. And really, you guys bring a lot of light to a subject that I think a lot of people don't understand, right? And here I am. I feel like I'm that guy. I don't understand it exactly, even though I've had people on my podcast. You guys are the first ones that are actually making a lot of sense to me right now. And because I think I get it, the placeholder for what it makes sense to do, and then how you approach it, right? And I know there's got to be a lot of people out there that have money just sitting just there, just like I do, right? And they should be doing something with it.
Yep, just a little education is all it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, truly. So, in books, I know you brought up a book, Anthony. What are you guys reading right now? Any books you guys been reading lately that's really turned your needle that you're like, man, that's a good one?
We're reading.
Well, we got a bunch. But I would say you can use that one. I'm just finishing Good to Great, which has been around for a while, and I'm a little don't like saying I'm just reading it now. But
behind the times.
But I thought it focused on large companies.
Yeah.
But those principles can be related to any company. You don't need to be large to be great.
Amen.
My favorite book, I mentioned this several times, is Antifragile by Nassim Taleb. And what he talks about this idea of fragility, right? If you have an object that you put under stress or pressure, right, and it cracks, everybody knows that's fragile. What people believe the opposite of that is resiliency, right? That object, you put it under stress or pressure and it's resilient to it. It doesn't break. In the English language, we don't have a word for this idea of anti-fragility, which he wrote this entire book about, meaning that if you have an object, it needs that stress or pressure to grow and to get better and stronger. And that concept right there has completely changed the way I approach pretty much my whole life, to be honest. I love that idea of needing that pressure. And once you kind of understand that, you realize that, man, life or marriage or working out and all this stuff isn't supposed to be easy. Right?
It's a great motivator. It's what puts you in the driver's seat, is like the little bit of pressure behind you. And that's life, by the way.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It's not fair.
Yeah, I'll share one more if you don't mind, Corey. The other one that I would recommend is Profit First. This is for real estate investing. And this is written by David Richter. Great book. But what he talks about is, even Robert Kiyosaki, you referenced him before, and even George Clason wrote The Richest Man in Babylon, and they all talk about, paying yourself first. It's all in theory though, right? David Richter's come along, put a book together that gives you like the practical application on how to actually do that. And it's fine-tuned for real estate investors. And so
Profit First is great, man. I love that book, right? We implemented we were implemented before I even know like what it was, right? So I was still more of a, buckets of money kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'd already opened up like 5 or 6 bank accounts for every property that I buy, right? And I'm like, because I wanted to sweep money away, because I always found out whatever was in the operating account always gets spent.
Yeah.
Right. From the property management companies, right? They just seem to always spend it. It's like, I got to get that money out of there, put it in different spots so I can have it available. Right. And I realized, I was like, oh my God, this is just a more advanced level of doing the same thing, but gosh darn, it works. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're very methodical with it.
Yeah. We're doing a live event with David Richter. If any of your listeners want to join us, we'll get that information over to you.
Awesome. If guys want to learn more about your guys' company and how to get a hold of you guys and just learn more about Infinite Wealth and maybe some of the education you guys have, where would they go?
Yeah, they can go to infinitewealthconsultants.com. That is our website. We have a podcast. You can see it right here behind us, Infinite Wealth Podcast. We're on all the major platforms out there. But Corey, we do have an online course. And kind of as a thank you, what we'll do is we'll extend your listeners we'll give you a link that they can actually access our course for free.
Okay.
And so we'll give you that. We'll put it in the notes, but it's going to be infinitewealthconsultants.com/multifamily legacy. And if they go to that landing page, that'll let them in the course. Usually we charge $500, but really once they get in there, what they're going to find is really just the education on infinite banking, some of the how-tos, find some case studies, some overviews on it. And there won't be anything salesy in there, right? It'll just be all education. And there'll be a link in there that if they want more information after that point, they can schedule a meeting with myself or Anthony.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, make sure we put it in the show notes too. So if you guys listen to this right now, you can go in the show notes and find that link for sure. If you just hear it, don't worry about it. It'll be in the show notes. So we'll make sure we get that to you guys. So guys, as we wrap up, man, first of all, there's lots of ways to make money, right? There really is. And you guys alluded to it a couple times, right? Like having strategies are the most important part of that vehicle, right? And really having a mindset. And both of you guys have talked about you had a shift, right? And then the way you were thinking and it changed, and then the way you move forward has really propelled you guys and propelled your success. What advice would you give to people that are listening to this podcast right now, either newer or I will say, we'll just talk about the holistic approach to it. What advice would you like to give people listening right now?
I would say think long term and find a mentor. Most people can't, the old saying goes, if you want to go fast, go by yourself, but if you want to go far, you need to take somebody with you. And so sometimes those mentors are free, sometimes you need to pay for coaching, but a good mentor or coach can help you achieve your goals much faster than on your own.
I would say that nobody's going to care more about your money than yourself. You'd better learn how to manage your own money and have control over what you're doing. That is what's going to lead to success, not outsourcing that to anybody else.
Oh, amen. True words to live by, guys. Listen, thank you guys for coming on the podcast, by the way. Listen, this is really how we do it. We like to bring great education, great educators that will teach and guide and give you, solid information, a solid foundation. Anthony, Cameron, thank you again for coming on. Guys, success does not happen by accident. It is actually a choice. It is something you have to come up, you put it in your mind, and guys, more than ever, I think belief is really the catalyst, right? Before you can become successful or move to that next level, you have to put it in your mind, you have to believe it, guys. If you believe it, you can achieve it, and your paradise is possible.